Good evening. Welcome to the December 3rd, 2018 Troy City Council meeting. We are pleased this evening to have Mayor Pro Tem Baker lead us with the invocation. So if you would please rise for that and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Father in heaven, we give you thanks for this day and thanks for the blessings you've given each and every one of us here in Troy and beyond. We ask that you continue to bless us and be with us here at the table this evening as we work for the better of the city of Troy and for its residents. We ask that you be with those out in the cold who need your assistance, those who are facing crisis, this very joyous for many but difficult time for others. Be with them always, especially those who are struggling with loss of job, loss of health, loss of family members. It's a very tough time. We also ask, Lord, that you be with those in the Bush family who lost former President Bush this week. And we also ask that you be mindful and care over all those who provide public service, recognizing that that happens at every level of our government and our country, throughout this city especially. It's a wonderful gift, and please be with former President Bush as he reunites with his family that he's already previously lost. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Baker. Troy City Council meeting is now called to order. The roll call, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Slater?
Here.
Councilmember Abraham? Here. Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Here.
Councilmember Henderson?
Here.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Here.
Councilmember Pennington?
I did receive correspondence from Councilman Pennington that he would be out of the county this evening, so I will move to excuse the absence of Councilman Pennington at the regular City Council meeting of December 3rd, 2018, due to being out of the county.
Support.
Moved by the chair and supported by Mayor Pro Tem Baker that we excuse the absence of Councilman Pennington at the regular City Council meeting of December 3rd, 2018, due to being out of the county. Discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington? I'm sorry.
Motion passes. First on the agenda are certificates of recognition and special presentations. We have 3 this evening. C1, it's my honor to present a proclamation celebrating the Suburban Collection's 70 years in business in Troy. And I'd like to make the presentation to the President and COO, David Fisher Jr. If he would meet me at the podium, I'd be honored to present this.
Thank you, sir, very much. It's an honor to be here.
Face this way instead of this way.
Thank you.
David, it's my honor and a privilege to present this proclamation to celebrate the Suburban Collection's 70 years in business, 1948 to 2018. I think that sets the record. I can't remember doing one 70 years yet. But if you could, I would like to read this into the record because it's such a great story about how it started November 12th, 1948. So whereas on November 12th, 1948, Richard Dick Fisher opened its doors as a single-point Oldsmobile dealership known as Suburban Motors in Birmingham, Michigan. Today, under the leadership of Chairman and CEO David T. Fisher and President and COO David T. Fisher Jr., the Suburban Collection is home to more than 3,000 team members, representing 36 brands at over 54 locations, inclusive of collision centers, accessory distribution centers, fleet management, and retrofitting services throughout, of course, the United States and Canada, offering a comprehensive array of automobile solutions to their retail and industry customers. And whereas, while they are extremely proud of their past, the Suburban Collection team is even more excited about the future. Reaching this 70-year milestone is a true testament to the fact that they have never lost focus of their core values, building trusting and confident relationships. And whereas for 70 years, the Suburban Collection has rooted themselves as part of the fabric of our communities and continues to be an enthusiastic supporter of local, regional, and national nonprofit organizations. They focus their charitable giving efforts into 4 specific areas, including children, education, basic needs, and cancer. For years, the Suburban Collection has been rewarding our community's top educators through the Teacher of the Year initiative by providing a free vehicle lease from a Suburban dealership within the teacher's school district. And whereas the Suburban Collection has generously donated to more than 100 organizations in Troy and surrounding areas, including, this is an incredible list: the Troy Community Coalition, Troy Police and Fire Benevolent Association, Troy Historical Society, Detroit Zoo, Detroit Historical Society, American Cancer Society, MS Association, American Red Cross, Carmano Center Institute, the Community House, Boys and Girls Club of Southeast Michigan, Toys for Tots, Gleaners, Kids Kicking Cancer, Detroit PAL, ALS Association, COTS, American Heart Association, Boy Scouts of America, United Way, Michigan Humane Society, and I could go on and on and on. So now, therefore, be it resolved that the Mayor and City Council of the City of Troy hereby congratulate the Suburban Collection on their 70th anniversary in business, and be it further resolved that the Mayor and City Council and City Management join the citizens of this community in celebration of the 70th anniversary of the Suburban Collection, and of course look forward to it being part of Troy for many more years to come, offering excellent customer service through buying, leasing, and servicing a vehicle. David, this is presented on the 3rd day of December 2018, signed by myself, all members of City Council. We cannot thank you enough for what you and your family has done for our community in the past. So congratulations, well done.
Sure.
No, I'm good.
On behalf of my grandfather, my dad, and I, we are honored to be here. We are honored to be in Troy, and I can't thank you enough for this honor. And I'm actually really impressed that with a font that small, you could read that without a single problem.
Believe me, I've said that before. You can really tell when somebody's important or they've been around a long time, not the size of the font.
Your ability to read it's pretty good.
Well, that's a story.
Good.
how your dad says. Thank you, sir.
Congratulations again to Somerset Collection. I think everyone has at some time purchased or had connection with Somerset Collection with a vehicle in some way. So Suburban. Suburban. Yes.
2 collections.
I know. I was thinking about, I think my wife's at the collection tonight, and I think I got it in my... Okay, next is C2. On behalf of the City of Troy Employees Casual for Cause program for the months of September and October 2018, Community Affairs Director Cindy Stewart will present a check. And I'll keep it as a surprise who you're presenting to.
They don't know yet that they're getting a check.
All right.
No, I'm kidding.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. It's my honor tonight to be able to give a check for $546 that we collected from Casual for Cause, all the employees, to on my own staff, Leslie and Alexa and Becky.
Thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Want to say a little bit about On My Own?
Sure. On My Own of Michigan actually has been a recipient of the Suburban Collection's generosity in the past as well, so thank you very much. We are an organization just down on Kurtz, and we help adults who have developmental disabilities to live independently. Becky is one of our original members, and she's been with the program 21 years. And we have 62 members. About 60% of them live independently, which is in comparison to the national average of 25%. So we offer a skill building program where our members basically get the skills needed to live independently, and they also create friendships. It's a very lonely existence. As you can imagine. So they have wonderful friends. They have more active social lives than most of us. And then the other half of our members are part of our independent living program, where they live independently and they work with our support coordinators like Alexa to get the supports that they need to remain independent. So they don't have to rely on their families for everything. They live independently. It's not a group home situation. They live in with roommates, some of them, and on their own. And that's why we're on My Own of Michigan. So we're very grateful for the support of the city. The fire department has been great supporters of us as well, and we're just really, really grateful for your support.
All right, you've just this year played the third game, the third annual softball game against the firefighters.
The firefighters.
Who's won for 3 years?
I believe we have. I don't know. I wasn't there this year. Who wins, Chief?
Yeah,
we do? I think there's some creative scoring going on sometimes, but
I don't think so.
No?
I've been to your office. I've seen the trophies. Yeah.
They do very well in the Special Olympics as well.
Yes, they do.
So they do well. They love bowling and they love softball.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Very nice.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you, and thank you for what you do for our community. Thank you.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next on the agenda is C3. It's a audit presentation and awards, and I see Tom Darling, our Financial Services Director, smiling and coming.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council. If you can give me a second, I'm going to pull up some hardware. Great. Well, thank you for allowing me to present the results of our audit for the year ended June 30th. 2018 and the results of our financial operations. But before I get into the details of that, I'd like to have you join me in celebrating some of the financial awards that the city was able to obtain this year. The first here is the Distinguished Budget Award. And so there's the budget, there's the award. I'd like to start off by recognizing all of our department heads, who starting about right now till the end of May, will be rolling up their sleeves and digging deeply into their budgets to develop this document for you. I'd also like to recognize Beth Tashnik and Stephanie Flesher from the City Manager's Office that puts this kind of all together. This award reflects the commitment of the City Council and staff in meeting the highest principles of governmental budgeting. The city's budget serves as a policy document, a financial plan, an operating guide, and a communication device. This year marks the 18th consecutive year that the city has achieved this award. That's not all.
Congratulations.
There we go. This next one is the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. In other words, the CAFR. We're going to talk about the 2018 in a minute. This is the 2017 one. I'd like to recognize Lisa Burnham, our accounting manager, Anita Halprin, Ashley Webb, Renee Hazen, Lori Thayer, Kathy Jules, Barb Losi, and Sasha Fatima from our finance department helping putting this together. This award is for the 2017 CAFR. It represents the highest form of recognition in governmental accounting and financial reporting. It demonstrates a constructive spirit of full disclosure, and if you read it, you know we're disclosing about everything in here, right? Transparency and the ability to clearly communicate its financial story and motivate users and user groups to read it. This year represents the 21st consecutive year that the city has achieved this award. Finally, we have the award for the popular annual financial report. And basically, what this is taking this document, right, and condensing it into something maybe a little more user-friendly for our average resident. I'd like to recognize Cindy Stewart from our Community Affairs Department for putting this together. It represents the highest standards for preparation of state and local governmental popular reports, is what they call these. The contents conform to program standards of creativity, presentation, understandability, and reader appeal. This marks the 19th consecutive year that the city has achieved this prestigious award. So as you know, I like math. I do work with numbers all day, right? Well, we've got over 1,800 local municipal governments in the state of Michigan. As far as I can tell, only 5 entities receive all 3 awards. 2 are counties, one's an institution of higher education, and 2 are cities, one of which is the city of Troy. So it's kind of some rare air there. So finally, why do we go the extra mile? It takes a lot to put these together and get these awards. It's these type of efforts that demonstrate to our community our commitment to fiscal stewardship, transparency, long-term financial planning, and accountability, and it helps us achieve, by doing this, it helps us achieve that goal, along with help maintaining our AAA bond rating. So finally, although I've only recognized a few, again, it's the whole city that really puts this together, along with you, council, in making this happen. So thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
To everyone.
All right, with that, let's go ahead and we'll move it into the presentation of the 2018 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report for the year ended June 30th, 2018, and we'll see if I can remember how to use this thing. Okay, so far, yes, okay. So first of all, let's go through what's in this 174-page document here. First, you have an introductory section that starts on page 1. And inside that, you'll see an executive summary, a detail of the city's organizational structure, some narratives on financial results really at the fund level. And it serves as a great place really to either get a quick, guide to the what happened financially to the city, or it starts as a basis for an in-depth, analysis if you want to go take that extra step. Starting on page 17 is the financial section, and really there's 5 parts into this. The first are the governmental-wide statements, which looks at the organization as a whole. Includes both our governmental-type funds, our business-type funds. It uses what we call a full accrual basis of accounting, which means you've got capital assets in there, you've got long-term debt in there. It's really the same basis as you would look at any private company. What is their economic strength? The next, in the financial section, you have the fund level financial statements, and this is the level, what they call the modified accrual basis of accounting, where the focus is on what's available spendable resources, right? I can't spend capital right at the governmental wide, but this is the next level of what can we spend, what can council appropriate in future budgets. Also in that, and that's the basis really that we use for budgeting and some of our short-term financial planning. Also in the financial section, you'll have the notes to the financial statements, and really the notes, what they'll do is provide more detail on some of the components in the financial statements, such as cash, receivables, again, capital assets, things of that nature at that level. In the financial section, you'll also see the RSI, which is the required supplemental information, and that gives a lot more detail then on the city's pension plan, its retiree health care plan, and the volunteer fire incentive program. And then finally, in the financial section, we'll have some combining statements for our non-major funds and component units. Next, starting on page 143 is the statistical section, and basically this is an interesting section. It provides like a 10-year financial trend information, revenue and debt capacity of the city, has some demographic information in there, and some operating information and continuing disclosure information. So that would wrap up the statistical section. Finally, starting on page 173 is the auditor's report on internal control and compliance, and that starts again on page 173. This is a great segue then into the introduction of Nate Balderman, who is the principal of governmental assurance services for the Raymond Group, who provided our audit, and he's going to talk a little bit about this report for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. In terms of, Tom's going to go over in more detail the actual financial results and everything. I just wanted to share tonight kind of the focus of what our audit is. Tom talked about that within that financial section, we have the section related to, or we have a section in that that's actually our independent auditor's report. What we stress in that, when you look through the independent auditor's report, there's different sections in that report that talk about management's responsibilities. Ultimately management's responsible for what's in this document. Then our responsibility, as well as the internal controls over that information to make sure that the information is presented fairly. And then our responsibility is to design our audit in order to be able to issue an opinion on the financial statements. I always like to clarify the fact, and it says in our report, our objective is not to give an opinion on the internal controls. It's not to give an opinion on whether or not fraud existed. Those are all things that happen as a result, as a part of our audit. We do look into those things, but we ultimately don't issue an opinion on that. We're planning our procedures, doing those types of things, looking over the internal controls, so that we can give you an opinion on the financial statements. The opinion on the financial statements this year was considered to be an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion. And that focus, when you look at this entire document, is in that financial section only. We don't give an opinion on the introductory section, on the statistical section. Our focus is on that financial section. So it was a clean opinion. And then the other part of our report is those last pages that Tom was talking about that's on page 173. That's our report on internal control. It's not an opinion on the controls, but it is that report under government auditing standards. We're required to report to you if things come to our attention during our procedures that raise to the level of what we would call either a material weakness or a significant deficiency. We're required then to report those items to you, as well if there was something that came to our attention that was considered to be material non-compliance related to grants, contracts, those types of things. So I'm happy to say there was nothing in our audit that raised to that level where we were required to report that to you in the actual audit report. So that's there. We also have a separate letter that you would have received as well that's considered to be a management letter, just so that you know that information is in there. It gives you, there's certain required communications that we have to make to you, and those are in that separate letter. So any questions that you would have for me while I'm up here on our audit this year of the financial statements?
Thank you. Any questions from council? Well done.
Thank you.
I think the letter that you wrote is self-explanatory.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nate. Okay, moving forward. I think. Okay. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the financial results. The first thing we're going to talk about is the governmental-wide statements, and they start on page 33 in your report. Again, these statements focus on the city as a whole and includes all types of funds, both governmental and business type funds. It uses a full accrual basis of accounting, which means it's including, capital assets, long-term debt, any pension liabilities we have there, along with any pension assets that we have out there. Again, the focus is on the economic condition of the city and not necessarily spendable resources. So let's go ahead and look at at 6/30/2018, total net position of the city was $412.3 million, representing our economic capacity to provide future services. Okay, again, it's not spendable. This is an increase of about $8.1 million. If you notice, in 2017 it was from 4.4 up to 412.3. So that's about a $8.1 million increase from the prior year. This is a signal of good financial health, as it shows the city's ability and willingness to invest back into the city's infrastructure and not just deplete our capital assets to provide current services. Should also be noted there in 2016, the effects of adopting GASB 75 was recognizing the total liability for retiree health care. Okay, so you can see that took us, from about $450 million down to about $391 million. But again, as you can see, we got a 3-year trend. We're still building that up. And quite honestly, when other cities, we adopted that early. Some cities are just adopting it this year, and it would have a real significant, I believe some would be below zero when they recognize that. So far, so good. We took our lumps, recognized the liability, and onward and upward we're moving. Okay, next, so let's break that $412 million down into its components. And again, by far the largest portion is our investment in our capital assets of about $337.9 million. This represents about 82% of the total of our total net position, and that increased about $5.8 million from the prior year, from $332.1 million to the $337.9 million. Next is our restricted net position. Is the restricted net position of $18 million. You see it dropped a little bit from the $19.4 in the prior year. Now, restricted is really our special revenue funds, our debt funds, and our capital. They're restricted for a specific purpose, so we spent some of that down, which is all part of the normal course of business. Finally, is our unrestricted net assets, which was $56.4 million, and that's kind of an interesting story. I mean, it increased from the prior year from 52.7 to 56.4, so it increased about $3.7 million. But we can certainly see the effects, right? Back in 2014, when we had this net pension asset that we recognized, right? And then, of course, the other shoe falls off, right, in 2016, and recognizing the big liability and what the effects that had on our unrestricted net assets. So that's why you see that variance there. Okay, next, so let's go ahead and talk about, again, governmental activities. So again, we talked a little bit at the governmental-wide level. We got two types of activities. We got our governmental activities, and we got our business-type activities. Now, while business-type activities are designed to cover the entire cost of the service, i.e. our water funds are designed to cover the whole cost, right? Sewer funds, golf courses, aquatic centers, those are business-type activities. This is what we're looking at as our governmental activities. And really what this is showing is that, hey, while some of our activities can generate part of their own revenues through their own programs, right, that shortfall is really why we have property taxes, and to some extent state shared revenue. So what this is trying to show you is to what degree and what use are your property taxes doing to provide certain services. Okay? As we can see, by far the largest service we have is for public safety, right, at $29.4 million. Again, if we look at that, that $29.4 million, public safety was able to generate $5.6 million of, to cover their own costs through grants, through services with other communities in Somerset and things like that, right? But they couldn't cover the whole cost. And so that's what it's trying to show you is where your property taxes go. Okay, so that we'll leave governmental-wide alone now, and we'll go down into the fund financial statements. And really, this is the level, that we develop the budget on, that we do our short-term financial planning on. Again, it's a modified accrual basis of accounting, which is basically saying, look, you don't have capital assets in there, you don't have debt in there, you had the debt service for that year's payments, but the idea is what is your available spendable resources for your term financing. So let's focus in then on the general fund, which is the main operating fund of the city. Just on the revenue side. So on the revenues, we were able to generate about $55.5 million of revenue, which is about $1.6 million above the budget amount of $53.9. Okay, so let's break that 55.5 down a little bit. So we did better than budget on revenues. So by far, our biggest revenue generators are for property taxes at 53%, intergovernmental revenues, which is primarily state shared revenues, right, at about 15%, and then charges for services at about 14%. So of those three categories, you've just accounted for 82% of my ability to generate revenues. So let's go ahead and dig a little bit deeper into those three classifications. So at the top is basically the property taxes at $31.7 million, increased from the prior year about $700,000. But again, if you look, it's still down from 2009 levels of $36.5 million. And as you can see, it didn't take long for these big decreases to hit back between 2009 and 2012. But it's certainly a long climb back up, as you can see, small increases again since 2016 when I finally started breaking it, maybe 2015, started, hit that bottom and working our way up. Anyway, the message is it's a long climb back up. For property taxes. Intergovernmental revenues, again, is the purple line. At $8.8 million. It's up about $300,000, and again, we got a little bit more state shared revenue than we thought. 2019 is not going to be as good because what they counted as state shared revenue, remember when they did the exempt manufacturing personal property taxes, took it away from them, they made it exempt, and they said, we'll turn around, we're going to give it back to you through LCSA, which is the Local Community Stabilization Act. Well, make a long story short, we got about $1.2 million in 16, or in 17, about $1.2 million in 18, and I just got my check for about $600,000, so ouch. But we'll talk about that next year or during the budget sessions, right? Then finally, we got charges for service at $8.7 million. Again, that's pretty flat from the prior year, and it's kind of been hovering the last 3 years around that mark. Let's talk about expenditures now. Okay, we had general fund expenditures. Ahead of myself here. $56.4 million, which was under budget. Budget amount of $60.5 million by about $4.1 million. But it did increase from the prior year. If you look at the prior year, we had actual expenditures of $53.3 million. So that did go up by about $3.1 million or 5.8%. Now, when we talk about budget, as you all know, the city uses a conservative approach to budgeting. As such, we budget for full employment, total sick and vacation payouts, illustrated rates for health care. We budget in that way because if that makes sense, budgeting that way, guess what? Hopefully our actuals, right, shoot for the stars, maybe hit the moon, right? Type thing, that we should be good at financial shape. And one of the reasons we do that is because we're self-insured on a couple critical issues, right? Health care, general property liability. It doesn't take much, you know, to you get a bad year that would really have a significant financial effect in that particular year. So again, we use a conservative approach. That's why we're under budget like we are. Let's go ahead and look at the expenditures by function. Again, as you can imagine, public safety is our largest expense in the general fund, 56%, which represents, let's see, where did I go? I lost myself here. There we go. Represents about $31.3 million at 56%. So, of that $31.3 million, the police department represents about 23.5%. Okay. So, although we're talking about history, right, the CAFR's history, this is what we did do, right? Let's go ahead and put that in perspective. How's it line up with our 3-year budget, and what does that do to our unassigned fund balance? And as we can see, as we're trending, we put in a 2018 actual there, we were still trending to stay between that 20 and 30% of unassigned fund balance as it relates to the budget going forward. So that's good news. That's where we want to be. Okay. Next, let's talk about the Capital Projects Fund. Okay, in 2018, we generated, the Capital Projects Fund generated $15.4 million in revenues and expended $18.1 million in purchasing capital. So that's basically, that is a shortfall, right, of we had a shortfall that year, obviously about, what, $2.6 million. Let's see what we did to generate that. It should be noted that, you know, let me go back one page and talk a little bit more about, sorry, if I can. There we go. Of that $15.4 million in revenue, only about 6.9 of it is from property taxes. So, you know, overall, less, you know, than a third of it's from property taxes. The remainder is from intergovernmental grants, which account for about $1.5 million. But the majority of it is from transfers from other funds, about $6.5 million. Our major streets, right, local streets, they need to contribute to help, right, build our streets. So, again, we only get about $2.5 million from major streets, maybe $1 million from local streets, so about $3.5 million. But guess what? I'm spending a lot more than that on streets, right? In fact, about 68% of that money we spent for capital budget, capital projects of $18.1 million was for streets. So of that, yeah, so that represents about 68% or about $12.3 million. So not only am I taking all my major local street money that I can, right, but a lot of our property taxes, and really from Bill Hootery trying to get some of those federal grants, right, to help subsidize some of those streets that helps us afford to be able to do that. But again, as I said, we dropped about $2.3 million in fund balance, and here's what it looks like over the last 5 years. So we're definitely investing, but obviously we do have a trend of using fund balance for the Capital Projects Fund. So it's probably something that we're going to want to look at it in the next budget cycle and come up with, well, how much is enough, or where do we want to go? Do we want to try and build it up for the next set of roads that we're doing, or anyway, it's going to be a source of discussion. Okay? Okay, let's go ahead and start talking a little bit about some of our enterprise funds. And I know we had some questions earlier today on this. Let's start with the water fund. The water fund was able to generate about $20.2 million in revenues, but the operating expenses were about $20.9 million. Now, this is from just the operations standpoint. After that, we did get some non-operating revenue and some developer contributions. So really, the decrease in net position, this is economic, not spendable, net position was about $145,000. So let's talk about the decrease in revenues, right? It went from 20.7 to 20.2, and even though I increased the water rates from 38.50 per MCF to 39.30, I still ended up with less revenue. Why? So I didn't sell as much water. And it's always been one of the major things, right? In fact, we sold about 29,000 MCFs less than we did last year. Again, we look at these every year, right? How have we done in the past? What's the trends when we try to establish rates? Because at the end of the day, right, most of my costs are fixed. In fact, 60% of my water costs are fixed by the Great Lakes Water Authority, so it's not necessarily a variable. I've got to sell so much to try and break even. Okay, even with that being said, we still have one of the lowest water rates in the area that I know of. It should also be noted, if you can see in 2017, I went from $19 million in cost to $20.9. It seems I went up $1.9 million. Well, it's a little bit of a misnomer there. When we adopted GASB 75, retiree health care, you don't see that at the funds for the governmentals because they're not full accrual, right? But these are. And actually, in 2017, we had a $1.2 million credit in expenses for retiree health care. So if you would have add that 1.2 million, now you're about to 20.2 million for 2017. We didn't have such credits for 2018. And in fact, because of the sensitive nature, right, of pension funding, you're at the mercy of what's the market doing, right? We could see more influxes like this in our enterprise type funds going into the future. So we try and get those out, when analyzing what should our rates be, what are our true operations, and try and get rid of some of those big variances that you can see with pensions. And again, we just adopted it, so it's already shown. You got to look at it, and then you got to get the information to go with it to try and put it in perspective. Okay, let's talk. We talked about that net position of Waterfront, what's about $100 million. And again, that $100 million, $85.5 million is invested in infrastructure for the water fund. We've got about $14.5 million of unrestricted. And again, you can see that we are still investing. We didn't invest as much this year as we did last year, but we're not dropping down. You don't see a trend of a decrease in the infrastructure. It's really what you're looking for. In fact, unrestricted went from $13 million up to $14.5 million, which means I've got cash to buy some infrastructure next year, should we need it. Okay, let's talk about the sewer fund. Wow, this one really gets a little wacky there. In 2017, I had $13.5 million of revenue and only about $12.4 million of expense. Yay, whoops. What happened in 18, that reversed completely around, right? Now I've got $13.5 million with $14.5 million worth of expense. And again, it's kind of the same thing. In 2017, it really wasn't 12.4. There's a credit in there for about $675,000, which, would take it up closer to the 13 range. Again, my revenues went from 13.5 to 13.3, right? Lost about 29,000 MCFs in sales. We may look at that again when we do budgeting. Typically when we budget, we're saying, we want about 670,000 MCFs to help develop the rates, right? And I think when we sent that information earlier, you can see if I don't sell it, boy, I don't quite make the break-even point that we want to try and make. So we'll take a look at that again. Again, it's a long-term thing, right? That's why we have net position, so we can look at it over the years and hopefully not increase significant rates that we get charged right from GLEWA, right? In 1 year, so we can maybe pass it on little by little over to our consumers until it makes sense. Okay. Okay. Again, of that fund balance for the sewer fund, the $66.9 million. The largest part again is in capital assets, $37.9, about $38 million. We've been hovering around that position for the last couple years. Unassigned was $28.9 million, so we certainly have unrestricted assets to be able to cover it. One reason why this one, and you might look and say, well, God, that's a little high, Tom. Why do you need $28 million in the sewer fund? Well, one of the things is the sewer fund we have a hard time controlling. The county controls that, right, the spending. Hey, we're going to do some big project on the Evergreen Farmington district. We're going to put in the 12 towns district. In fact, we went through this, 3 years ago, right, for the Evergreen, and a lot of communities were bonding out to pay their side of that. We put a little extra cushion here, so again, because we don't have as much control on this as, again, some other local entities. So we want to be prepared, and of course, we're debt adverse. Okay, let's go ahead. I want to talk about one more enterprise fund, and that is Sanctuary Lake, which is some good news. And the good news is that we've actually had operating revenues in excess of operating expenses for the last 3 years. So I got a 3-year trend there. That's good stuff. And why is that good stuff? It's because we have a bond on Sanctuary Lake, right? So I need to make some operating revenue, or income, if you will, to help offset some of the operating expense. So as you can see in 2018, the non-operating expense, which is basically interest expense on the bonds, was about $254,000. We were able to generate $104,000, right, of operating income to help offset that. Obviously, we don't cover, I don't foresee covering that for a while. And it also then means that the general fund has to contribute, or at least loan Sanctuary Lake, right, so, some dollars so that they can make the debt service. Again, depends on how you want to look at it. It's certainly, most typically, it's cheaper than a landfill, right, maintenance. Okay. Finally, I'll talk a little bit about the trust funds because I know you've been waiting for this. You're all looking very intense at getting to the last page, I think. But at the end of the day, our employee retirement system, and I had to really work on this graph, it wouldn't go up to 121.9, but I got as close as I could. But we're 121.9% funded, which means the city's contribution for 2018 was 0, and will be 0 for the next couple years. Hopefully. This retiree health care system is 59.5% funded. That went up a couple notches from what it was. It was around 54%. So again, we made some strides in getting that funded. We budgeted about $4.8 million annually as a contribution for that. And then finally, the volunteer fire incentive program, and that went up a couple notches at 49.2% funded. I think it's around 44, somewhere in there. Our contribution to that was $1.7 million for the 2018, which is about $600,000 more than the actuary said we needed to, but we thought it was a good thing to start at least trying to get this thing better funded than it was. And again, being funded provides our volunteers with some assurance that the assets are there to provide pension or volunteer incentive benefits that we've promised in the past. Okay. Almost there. One final slide. Again, the statistical section, as I mentioned before, has trend information over the last 10 years, has revenue and debt capacity information, provides demographic and economic information, operating information, continuing disclosures. It's a great section to kind of go through and some tidbits of information in that. With that being said, that's the end of my presentation, and I'm ready for the first question.
Thank you, Tom. Councilman Hamilton.
Thank you, Tom, and your whole staff for this. Is fantastic. Just a couple quick questions. Why is it that Troy has one of the lowest water rates around? What are I know you said 60% of the costs are fixed, so 40% off. What makes us stand out and have
Probably
the lowest
one of the
rates?
biggest things is debt. We don't have a lot of debt out there that we have to generate to cover as compared to some other communities.
Right.
And there's about 7 different ways, right, that you can, carve the apple. I mean, some have ready-to-use fees. They have a slew of fees, including debt service fees. We try to keep it simple. We got one rate. Now, we have some minimums, right? I'm going to at least charge you for 2 MCS, whether you use a drop or none, right? Because we still have certain fixed costs we have to make, but that's how we manage it, and it's worked well for this city, quite honestly, and it's simple for our residents and consumers to read their bill. There's not a ton of different charges on there.
And then you said sometimes we have a large fund balance for sewer because it's hard to control, because I just want to understand that better. So the county can come in and say, we're doing this work, you got to fork up this money, or how does that work? What's the distribution between county and our costs?
Well, what it does is it typically services several different communities. So I'll take 12 town drains, right, which we still have debt out for that. Happened back in 98, 2000, somewhere in there. But anyway, it was coming up. Oh, by the way, Troy, you're a certain percentage of this, and I don't know how many millions of dollars is our share. Now, we did have to bond for that, but they do come out with several other smaller ones. And again, I think we were $2-3 million for the Evergreen, $5 million. $5 million was our share for the Evergreen project that they did because they put in square pits and water didn't circulate so well. But that's the idea. And that's worked well for us. Again, we like to be debt adverse if we can. But at the same time, we want to be just financially respondent to our residents, right? In their water rates.
Thank you.
Are there questions from council? Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom, and your staff do a great job, and the awards certainly show it, but we appreciate it too, because we can actually understand some of the stuff that you've given us. So thank you.
Well, thank you for reading it.
But now, of course, I have two quick questions that will probably show that I don't understand it, so forgive me for that. But on slide 12, it's the general fund expenditures, budget, and actual. And I know we've talked a little bit about this in the past, but we are conservative budgeters, and we tend to, because we budget for full employment, we budget for certain things, we tend to spend less than we budgeted each year, correct?
Correct.
Could you just give a brief little paragraph of where does that money go that doesn't get spent and how it's being properly used? I mean, obviously it goes a bunch of different places where it was budgeted.
Budget that's not used isn't used, right? It just goes into fund balance and it's looked at again in the next budgeting cycle. Should we use it? Typically, what we do, right, what the city's done in the past, what makes perfect economic sense and is a best practice, if we have a surplus at the end of the year, we use it for one-time expenditures. And what we've done is, we've done transfers, right, we buy capital with it. Hey, we're gonna enhance our road program, right? And we've been giving, a couple million over the last few years for that, right? We've also helped finance Fire Station number 4 with that. We've also used it to purchase a new ladder truck and some pumper trucks for the fire station. So, and that is a good way to do it, right? We budget conservatively. You know what? I'm telling you, our capital appetite is endless. It's absolutely endless, and if now we got to start looking at buildings. Is my understanding.
Right. And if I have just one other quick question, and I should have asked earlier, but on slide 16, just the capital projects fund expenditures by function, and for some reason tonight when you were going through it, 68% was streets. That makes great sense, but for some reason I can't remember what land improvements are at 10%.
Trails and pathways.
Okay. Oh.
Those are good land improvements.
I asked them. All right. Is that what that falls under? Land improvements.
That makes sense to me anyway.
Thanks for asking that question.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, that's it.
Councilwoman Hoderick.
When we use for capital expenditures, that's consistent with protecting our bond rating, correct? Maybe you could talk about that a little bit, about how we can use those funds. The best way to do it is the one-time expenses versus, say, funding a library operations, or how we've gotten to be into that practice is because we're trying to protect our bond rating while we take care of our capital needs.
Well, that's certainly a good point. In other words, do we operate within our means? Me, I operate below my means, right? Or try to, at least anyway, because the operations are an annuity, and they have a tendency to grow every year, don't they? They sure do. And so if you can budget below that, right, and again, any excesses, we've got the ability to do these projects or to enhance a certain project. For ideas that come, you don't see me saying, we can't do it, right? And I don't really want to be in that, we can do it once for that much, Does that make sense? And that certainly protects our bond rating because they can see that we are operating within or below our capacity, so they know that we got the capacity to make those debt service payments, right? We've got the capacity to be adverse should an economic downfall come. What's our ability to deal with that, right? Because if you think about it, what is fund balance? To me, in my mind, not getting in my mind, which is crazy, it's an insurance policy, right? If I got this much before I break, I don't have to make these drastic cuts, can I? slow down all the drastic cuts, right? And maybe we get a trend back up. Does that make sense? It gives us more time to work within versus if you don't have any hits now, you got to, and it's going to happen now. So.
Well, I think back to the year the roads were crumbling under our feet and we were able to step into that because I won't take credit. People ahead of me, Mayor, you were one of them on council and great decision-making here that put us in that conservative place where we could take care of what we needed to take care of along the way. And my hat's off to the people ahead of us that did that, and we'll try to continue that practice. My other question I asked earlier when I sent in questions was, regarding the audit and the internal controls, and they're basically saying, this audit doesn't ask for an opinion on that, and I'm learning that that's where the forensic audit idea is coming in, that we may want to drill down on, given some of the issues we've had in the recent past. So I appreciate the answer to that question. And for those watching that are wondering, are we looking at our internal controls? Are we paying attention? Can we learn from what we've just been through? We're having that dialogue and hoping to do that. And I just wanted to say that out loud in case people don't read the attachments to the agenda online. But it's in there, and we're talking about it. And certainly I know that work's been underway with you. Yep. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
My pleasure. Again, thank you.
Any comments, questions? Just to piggyback on Councilwoman Hoderick's first series question. When you take a snapshot of 2018, the reason we do a 3-year budget is that sometimes you may look like we have a surplus this year, but when you look at 2 years from now, you can see where maybe fund balance is being used to supplement a budget maybe next year or the year after, and that's why we do a 5-year outlook, so that we don't waste our money 1 year when we may need it another year.
Yes, Mayor. Absolutely. And it's a good point. Again, it's all part of what we talked about, why you get these awards, right? Fiscal, stewardship, long-term financial planning. That's what it's all part of.
It may look like you have $4 million this year, but in 2 years, that $4 million may be used in other areas.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why you get, the governmental why. If you looked at the general fund say, hey, you made $1.2 million surplus. No, 2019, we're using that to pay for 2 ladder trucks. So that's why you look at it in perspective. So good point, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks to staff. Okay, that concludes certificates of recognition and special presentations. There are no carryover items this evening, so we will move to public hearings. We have one public hearing this evening. E1 is a Community Development Block Grant, CDBG Program Year 2019 application. Cindy Stewart, Community Affairs Director, will introduce this item. So let me open this public hearing, and good evening, Cindy.
Good evening again. As you know, we do this every year, and Oakland County gave us the amount of $150,117. That's our approximate to work with as we planned out what we were going to do. Only 30% of it can be for public services, and we're going to go ahead with the yard services, our home tour program. We have between 80 and 90 seniors, and we're again doing their lawns, and we do their snow. We've had better quality of service and the people bidding on it, so the price has gone up for what we're paying for lawn service and spring and fall cleanups and snow. And then the 70%, $105,000, we have gotten approval from Oakland County to, at Firefighters Park, do some adaptive. We're going to take part of the grassy area that goes to the soccer fields because there's been people in wheelchairs that they can't get to the bleachers to watch people play. So we're going to put an asphalt path there, so that will take them from the parking lot to the bleachers. So that's what we're going to do with the 105, and then the 45,000 approximately, we'd like to continue with the yard services.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions from council? Just to emphasize, Cindy, we can only take 30% and use it towards
public services.
Public service.
Absolutely.
So we have no choice.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I see that Chelsea Holmes would like to speak on this item. Good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
My name's Chelsea Holmes. I'm a first response court advocate from Haven, and I'm the advocate from Haven that works with the Troy and Clawson communities. Thank you. I wanted to start by thanking you for your help and support that you've given us in the past. Haven is a nonprofit agency that helps survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. Your support enabled us to serve 106 Troy residents last year, and we ask that you continue that support again this year. Again, thank you, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. This is an opportunity just for you to speak to us, so we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak on this item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, return it to the table for resolution. Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
I'd like to move E1 Community Development Block Grant CDBG Program Year 2019 application as printed.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Baker and supported by Councilman Hamilton that we approve E1, the Community Development Block Grant CDBG Program Year 2019 application as printed. Discussion? I know there was a comment from Haven, and I know the police department and the city has been a strong advocate and partner with Haven over the years. Questions for staff, and I don't know if you know the answer, Mr. Miller. We still provide funding to the Haven group from the city?
I'm not sure. I just made a note to find that out.
Okay, because I got the impression that we do. And if we do, we certainly want to continue.
Right. The history was back in the Great Recession, we reduced full week payments, and then we restarted up some, and I can't remember all of them right now.
I know from my perspective, we certainly want to continue our partnership. If there are no other questions, the vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes, motion passes. Thank you. I don't see that anyone has signed up for public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses, so we will move to regular business as there are no postponed items either. First, I-1A, there are no mayoral appointments or city council appointments. I-2B, our board and committee nominations. I have two areas of nominations this evening. First, I would like to nominate Daniel Hunter to the Local Development Finance Authority, LDFA, committee for the term that expires 6/30/2020 as a replacement to Irene Spanos, who had to resign from the LDFA due to her promotion within the county. Let me correct that. Is that a Ms. Dixon, is that a 6/30/2020 vacancy? Because I don't see.
The term expires 6/30 of 2020. It was actually, the actual resignation was 6/30 of 2016. So the term does expire June 30th of 2020. So it's it's like a unexpired term.
Okay. The way that I'm reading this is that Ms. Spanos resigned 12/7 of 2018.
Right. The next line down is the vacancy that expires June 30th, 2020. The Oakland County designee does not have an expiration date on the term. It's automatic. They're always on.
Okay. So correction, there is no expiration. Okay.
Support.
Moved by the chair and supported by Mayor Pro Tem Baker that we nominate Daniel Hunter to the Local Development Finance Authority, LDFA, for the Oakland County designee as the term does not expire. Comment, questions from council? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Abraham?
Yes.
Motion passes. Next, I have four nominations for the Planning Commission. First of all, I want to thank Padma Kupa for being on the Planning Commission and serving these past years. And unfortunately for the city, but fortunately for Ms. Kupa, she's resigning to take her position up in Lansing. So I want to thank Padma for her service and her commitment to the city, and certainly want to congratulate her on her winning her election. So for the vacancy of Padma Kupa, I'm going to nominate Sadiq Rahman for that term that expires 12/31/2019. You can find Mr. Rahman's application in the portal. I did sit down with Mr. Rahman and had a conversation with him along with Padma. So I'm going to present that nomination. Also, I'm going to re-nominate Michael Hudson to the Planning Commission for the term that expires 12/31/2021, and John Tagle to the Planning Commission for the term that would expire 12/31/2021.
Support.
Moved by the chair and supported by Councilwoman Hoderick that we nominate Sadiq Rahman to the Planning Commission for the term that expires 12/31/2019, Michael Hudson to the Planning Commission for the term that expires 12/31/2021, John Tagle to the Planning Commission for the term that expires 12/31/2021. Discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Motion passes, and thank you to those citizens that have volunteered to be on that important committee. My understanding is there are no city council nominations this evening. I3, there is no request for a closed session, so we will move to the consent agenda. Any council member wish to pull a consent agenda item this evening? Councilman Henderson?
I'd like to move all items on a consent agenda as printed.
Support.
By Councilman Henderson and supported by Councilwoman Abraham that we approve all items on the consent agenda as presented in the agenda packet. Discussion? Just information under J3, a proclamation to celebrate Pennington Collision's 50th anniversary in Troy has been added to the agenda packet for presentation at the next council meeting. The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Motion passes. If you're here on a consent agenda item, they've all been approved this evening. Next are memorandums and future council agenda items. K2A is a welcome to Region Economic Development Corporation's Ready Communities memorandum that was included in the packet from last week. K2B is Chapter 74 solicitation ordinance revisions, and I'd just like to call on City Attorney Bloom for a couple comments on this.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. What you do have in your packets is a red line proposed version that was drafted by the members of City Administration and presented to you. And this is for our solicitation and also our peddler restrictions. So please review those ordinances, the red lines. If you do have any comments, please get them to me or Ms. Dixon at your earliest convenience, or Mr. Miller, of course, as well. We do plan on doing a presentation at the next council meeting unless there are significant revisions that we need to address. And hopefully that'll be presented to you for your consideration at the next council meeting. And also, I do want to give a shout out. There is a sample of the window cling for the Do Not Knock, and I'm going to, Ms. Dixon as well as Stephanie Fleischer have both worked on that, and perhaps she could address some of the proposed distribution of the window clings.
Sure. Thank you. The window cling is a result of questions over the years. Can I have a sticker, for my door or something? So it's just a response to that. We've had a number of requests from residents to have something for their door. And so once we receive them, the goal is to have them available for the 5-year anniversary of the Do Not Knock registry, so that, because every 5 years you have to sign up again. So we'll have those. We're going to do a whole campaign of, re-sign up, get your window cling. We'll have them available at all the city facilities. City Hall will have them in multiple locations, clerk's office, treasurer's office, manager's office. So they'll be readily available for everyone. We'll have enough for every household in Troy if they want it.
Wow. Thank you. Question from council regarding memorandums and future council agenda items. Next is public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. I'll call upon Diane Cipoletti, Troy resident, who wishes to speak this evening. Good evening, Diane.
Mayor Slater and City Council members. Number one, a big thank you to the residents of Oakland County for donating candy to the Oakland County's Sheriff Department. Number two, a big thank you to Michael Bouchard and his department for donating candy to the Troy Women's Association. Number three, a big thank you to Kathy Fishbane and the members of the Troy Women's Association for donating candy to the Michigan Military Moms Club of Oakland County, and for coming to our meeting last Tuesday evening to help pack the candy to send to our troops all over the world, and for help with the shipping cost. That's a big one. Side note, January 27, 2019, postage stamps are going up to 55 cents. So get your forever stamps in December and January. Unfortunately, shipping boxes are going up also. And a big thank you to the Troy Women's Association for helping with the shipping cost. Number four, a big thank you to the school children who wrote cards to our troops. We put cards in each box. Oh, the cards were so precious. It will bring miles of smiles to our troops' faces. Because of the thoughtfulness and kindness of the residents, Sheriff's Office, Troy Women's Association, and of course our students, our troops will know they are remembered, loved, and appreciated this holiday season. May God bless the residents of Oakland County and Troy with a blessed holiday season and a happy, healthy new year. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Diane, could you come back? Let us just take a look at your sweatshirt, if you could just stand there.
This is from Parris Island, November 19, No, November 21st, 2001. Have we had this?
All those thank yous, but thank you to your son for his service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
God bless America. God bless all our troops. Thank you.
Ditto. Counselor, staff wish to respond to comments this evening? Thank you, Diane. There are no council referrals this evening, so we will move to council comments. Any comments from council this evening? Okay. Next are reports. Any comments on the reports in the agenda packet this evening? We're on a roll. I don't see that anyone has signed up for comments on items on or not on the agenda from members of the public outside of Troy. There is no closed session this evening, so thank you for coming this evening. We are adjourned.